The explosion shook the floor beneath Danny's boots. He dropped his coffee mug and watched it shatter across the metal grating. Red lights flooded the corridor as sirens screamed through Orbital 7's lower decks. His radio crackled with panicked voices shouting about containment breaches and biological hazards. Danny Reeves had been a security officer for exactly 8 days. They gave him the graveyard shift in the biohazard wing because nobody else wanted it. Monitor the screens, they said. Press the alarm if anything moves, they said. Nothing ever moves down here, they said. Something was definitely moving now. He grabbed his stun baton and ran towards Section D. Smoke poured from the open blast door. Emergency lights cast everything in shades of red and black. His heart hammered against his ribs. Training told him to wait for backup. Common sense told him to run the other way. But someone might be hurt in there. Danny pushed through the smoke and froze. A creature lay crumpled against the far wall. It was massive, easily the size of a lion, maybe bigger. Its body was covered in midnight black armor plating that seemed to shift and ripple like oil on water. Rows of crystalline spines ran down its back, glowing faintly blue. Its head was angular and alien, with too many joints in the jaw. This was Subject 19. Danny had read the warnings posted on every screen in this section. Vorat bioepo. Extreme danger. Do not approach under any circumstances. Capable of phasing through solid matter. Blood is highly corrosive, designed to infiltrate and destroy. The creature whimpered. Danny's grip tightened on his baton. Subject 19 lifted its head and looked directly at him. Its eyes were enormous, pupil-less pools of silver that reflected the emergency lights. It made a sound, something between a chirp and a whine. Then it tried to stand, its left front leg buckled. The creature crashed back down with a yelp of pain. Dark fluid leaked from a gash along its side, hissing where it touched the metal floor. The creature looked at Danny again and made that sound, softer this time, pleading. Every alarm in Danny's head was screaming. This thing killed 3 handlers during testing. It could phase through walls and tear through steel with its claws. It was bleeding acid. You should be running. You should be calling this in. You should be doing literally anything except what he did next. Danny set down his baton and walked toward it. The creature's ears, if they were ears, pinned back flat against its skull. It watched him approach with those huge silver eyes. Danny stopped just out of reach and crouched down. He held out his hand slowly. Hey there, he said quietly. His voice shook, but he kept talking. You're hurt pretty bad, aren't you? It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. The creature tilted its head. Its nostrils flared, taking in his scent. Then it did something that made Danny's breath catch. It crawled toward him, dragging its injured leg, and pressed its massive head against his outstretched hand. The armor plating was warm and surprisingly smooth. Danny felt the creature's rapid heartbeat through its skull. It made a rumbling sound deep in its chest, almost like a purr. Very carefully, Danny stroked the side of its head. The creature leaned into his touch. Yeah, you're not so scary, Danny whispered. Just hurt and scared. I get that. Back on Earth, Danny had a dog named Pepper. She was a rescue, skittish and aggressive when they first brought her home. It took months of patience, but eventually she learned to trust. She would press her head into his hand exactly like this when she wanted comfort. Subject 19 shifted its weight and collapsed sideways. Its head landed in Danny's lap with enough force to nearly knock him over. The creature was panting now, its breath coming in rapid huffs. Up close, Danny could see how badly injured it was. The gash along its side was deep, and there were smaller cuts all over its body. You did this to yourself, didn't you? Danny said, still stroking its head. Try to break out. Got hurt in the explosion. The creature's eyes started to close. Danny felt its heartbeat slowing against his legs. That wasn't good. He needed to get help, but he was afraid to move. Afraid the creature would panic if he left. Afraid it would die alone in this smoke-filled room. His radio crackled. Reeves, report. What's your status? We're coming in with containment teams. Danny reached for his radio with one hand, keeping the other on the creature's head. This is Reeves. I'm in Section D with Subject 19. It's injured and non-hostile. I repeat, non hostile. Static. Then a different voice, sharp with authority. Get away from that thing immediately. That's an order. Sir, it's hurt. It needs medical attention. That's a bioweapon, not a pet. Move away now. Subject 19's eyes opened at the loud voice from the radio. It lifted its head slightly and looked at Danny. Then it made a soft chuffing sound and settled back down, trusting him completely. Negative, sir, Danny said quietly. I'm staying with it. He could hear boots in the corridor now, heavy and fast. Through the smoke, Danny saw lights and movement. A dozen security officers poured through the blast door, weapons raised. Behind them came the containment team in full hazard suits. Everyone stopped when they saw him. Danny Reeves, the newest and lowest-ranked security officer on Orbital 7, sat on the floor of a destroyed containment cell. The galaxy's most dangerous bioweapon was curled up in his lap like an oversized puppy, its tail wrapped protectively around his waist. Its eyes were half closed in contentment as he scratched behind what he assumed were its ears. Commander Roth pushed through the crowd. He was a tall Vestian with gray scales and cold yellow eyes. He stared at the scene in complete silence for a long moment. Explain this, he finally said. Danny looked down at the creature in his lap. Subject 19 nuzzled against his hand. I don't think I can, sir. Roth's jaw tightened. He looked at the containment team. Get them both to medical. Separate them if it becomes hostile. He turned his glare back to Danny. You and I are going to have a very long conversation about protocol, private. As they helped Danny to his feet, Subject 19 refused to let him go. It pressed close to his side, limping on 3 legs, keeping its injured one raised. When Danny walked, it walked. When Danny stopped, it stopped. The containment team gave them a wide berth, weapons still ready to in the medical bay. The creature would not let anyone else approach. It growled, low and dangerous, at every doctor who tried. Its spines glowed brighter, and its body began to phase in and out of sight, until Danny put his hand on its head and told it to be good. Then it lay down quietly and let them work. Nobody could explain it. Nobody understood it. But somewhere in the cold calculation of Vorth engineering, something had gone beautifully, impossibly wrong. They had created the perfect weapon. They just forgot to remove its heart. The conference room felt too small for all the anger it contained. Commander Roth paced back and forth like a caged predator. Chief Science Officer Lyra sat at the table with 3 data pads spread before her. Admiral Kress watched from the video screen on the wall, and Danny stood at attention in the corner, trying not to shake. This is unprecedented, Roth said for the 5th time. Subject 19 killed 3 train handlers. 3. It dissolved one of them so completely we had to identify him by his dental records. Lyra tapped one of her data pads with a thin purple finger. The planarian scientist had 4 arms and used all of them when she got excited. That was during initial testing, before we understood its psychological profile. Its psychological profile is murder, Roth snapped. Was murder, Lyra corrected. She pulled up a hologram showing brain scans. Look at these readings. This is 19 during standard containment. High cortisol, elevated aggression markers, theta wave patterns consistent with extreme stress. She swiped to a new image. This is 19 with Private Reeves. Cortisol dropped by 80%. Oxytocin levels higher than we've ever recorded in a Vorth specimen. The theta patterns have completely normalized. Roth stopped pacing. What are you saying? I'm saying the Vorth succeeded too well. They wanted to engineer out all unnecessary biological responses. Emotions, attachment, social bonding. But those systems are deeply integrated into mammalian neurology. They didn't remove them. They suppressed them. And somehow, contact with a human triggered a rebound effect. Admiral Kress leaned forward on the screen. English, please, Chief. Lyra's 4 hands moved in a gesture of frustration. The creature has imprinted on Private Reeves like a baby duck imprints on its mother. It has bonded with him at a neurological level. Separation would likely be fatal. Then we separate them and let nature take its course, Roth said coldly. Danny finally spoke. Sir, with respect, it has a name. Everyone turned to look at him. Roth's yellow eyes narrowed. Excuse me, its name is Scout, and it's not in it. He's a he. Private Reeves. That thing is military property. A failed weapons experiment. It doesn't get a name. He already has one, sir. And he responds to it. Roth took 3 steps toward Danny. He was a full foot taller, and his presence was intimidating even without trying. You named the bioweapon. Yes, sir. The bioweapon that could phase through walls and kill everyone on this station. He won't, sir. And you know this how? Danny met his eyes. Because he could have killed me a dozen times already. He hasn't. He won't. Lyra made a clicking sound with her beak. Actually, that tracks with my data. 19 shows extreme protective behaviors toward Private Reeves. When medical staff approached too quickly, his defensive responses activated immediately. But he never actually attacked. He was threatening, not hunting. There's a significant difference. Admiral Kress rubbed his temples. So we have a Galaxy-class bioweapon that acts like a loyal dog, but only for one random human security officer. That appears to be accurate, sir, Lyra said. This is insane. Agreed, sir. The room fell silent except for the hum of the ventilation system. Danny could feel his career ending with every passing second. He had broken every protocol in the book, endangered lives, compromised a military asset. He would probably be court-martialed and sent back to Earth in disgrace. Roth turned back to him. Where is Subject 19 now? In my quarters, sir. Under guard. And how is he behaving? Danny hesitated. He keeps bringing me things. What kind of things? Ration packs. A boot from the armory. This morning, he somehow got a computer console. I think he ripped it out of the wall in Cargo Bay 3. Lyra made a delighted chirping sound. Gift-giving behavior. That's remarkable. He's treating you like a pack member. Providing resources. Roth's expression suggested he did not find this remarkable at all. He looked at the Admiral. Sir, this is your call. But I recommend we terminate the experiment. The risks are too high. Admiral Kress was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, What are the potential benefits, Chief Lyra? Lyra's eyes brightened. If we can replicate this bond, we could revolutionize how we handle biological weapons. Instead of trying to control them through fear and containment, we could build relationships with them. The implications for interspecies cooperation alone are staggering. Or we could create an army of human-bonded bioweapons, Roth countered. Imagine what would happen if this technology fell into the wrong hands. Imagine what would happen if we understood it better, Lyra shot back. The Vorith created 19 to be a weapon. Private Reeves turned him into something else. Don't you want to know how? The Admiral studied Danny for a long time. Private, do you believe you can control this creature? Danny thought about Scout curled up on his bunk, making happy rumbling sounds in his sleep. He thought about the way Scout followed him everywhere, pressing close to his leg in crowded corridors. The way Scout's tail wagged when Danny came back from even short absences. I don't want to control him, sir. I want to work with him. That's not what I ask. Yes, sir. I believe I can keep him safe and keep everyone around him safe. Kress nodded slowly. Then here's what we're going to do. Private Reeves, you are hereby assigned as Subject 19's primary handler. You will train him. You will prove he can be trusted in controlled environments. Chief Lyra, you will monitor everything and document this bond. Commander Roth, you will design a series of tests to determine if this creature is safe or if it needs to be destroyed. Roth's jaw clenched, but he nodded. Understood, sir. You have 30 days, Kress continued. If by the end of that period Scout cannot demonstrate reliable behavior, we terminate the experiment. Is that clear? Crystal clear, sir, Danny said. After the meeting ended, Lyra caught up with Danny in the corridor. You know what you just agreed to, right? You're betting both your lives on this working. I know. Why? You barely know this creature. You've been around him for less than a day. Danny thought about that whimper in the smoke. The way Scout had crawled toward him despite the pain. The absolute trust in those silver eyes when Scout laid his head in Danny's lap. On Earth, I had a dog named Pepper. She was aggressive when we found her. Everyone said she was broken. Dangerous. Said we should put her down. He smiled at the memory. Took 6 months, but she became the sweetest dog you'd ever meet. Slept in my bed every night. Follow me everywhere. All she needed was someone who believed she was worth saving. Lyra studied him with her large golden eyes. Scout is not a dog, Private. No, Danny agreed. But he deserves the same chance. He left Lyra standing in the corridor and headed back to his quarters. Before he reached the door, he could hear scratching sound from inside, then a thump, then what sounded suspiciously like furniture being rearranged. Danny opened the door and stopped. Scout had somehow dragged Danny's mattress onto the floor. He had also acquired 6 more ration packs, 2 more boots that did not match, a tool kit, someone's jacket, and what appeared to be a potted plant. All of it was arranged in a nest-like pile in the center of the room. Scout sat in the middle of his collection, tail wagging so hard his entire back and moved. When he saw Danny, he made an excited chirping sound and bounded over, phasing partially through the overturned desk. "What did you do to my room?" Danny asked, but he was smiling. Scout pressed his massive head against Danny's chest and rumbled happily. His injured leg was already healing, the wound sealed by the same adaptive tissue that made him so dangerous. Danny scratched behind Scout's ears. "All right, buddy. We've got 30 days to prove you're not a monster. Think we can do it?" Scout's tail wagged harder. He licked Danny's face with a tongue that probably could have stripped flesh from bone if he wanted. Instead, it was just wet and slightly rough and completely dog-like. "Yeah," Danny said, looking around at the disaster of his quarters. "We've got this." Cargo Bay 7 had been cleared for training. Every other person and piece of equipment was moved out. The walls were reinforced. Emergency containment fields were installed at every exit. A medical team waited outside. Commander Roth watched from the observation deck with his hand near the emergency lockdown button. Danny stood in the center of the empty bay with a bag of treats and a prayer. Scout sat beside him, vibrating with barely contained energy. His tail swept back and forth across the metal floor with a rhythmic scraping sound. "Okay, boy," Danny said quietly. "Let's show them what you can do." He started simple. "Scout's seat." Scout was already sitting. His tail wagged harder. "Good boy." Danny, he gave him a treat. Scout chomped it down in one bite and looked expectantly for more. "Stunt." Scout stood. "Treat." Down. Scout dropped to his belly. "Treat." From the observation deck, Roth's voice crackled over the intercom. "This is basic obedience, private. My grandmother's cat can do this." Danny ignored him. "Stay." He walked 10 feet away. Scout's eyes tracked him, but his body remained perfectly still. Danny could see the effort it took. Scout's muscles were tense, his claws scraped against the floor. But he stayed. "Cool, me." Scout exploded into motion. He crossed the distance in half a second and nearly bowled Danny over in his enthusiasm. Danny laughed and gave him 3 treats. Over the next hour, Danny added more complex commands. "Hail," "Leave it," "Drop it." Scout learned them all with frightening speed. It was like his brain was designed to absorb and process information instantly, which Danny supposed it was. "He's intelligent," Lyra said over the intercom. "Much more than we thought. His learning curve is exponential." "He's a good boy," Danny corrected. Then came the hard part. Danny pulled out a magnetic ball. Scout's eyes locked onto it immediately. Every muscle in his body tensed. "You want it, don't you?" Scout made a high-pitched whine. His tail went still. Danny threw the ball as hard as he could. It bounced off the far wall with a metallic clang. "Get it." Scout vanished. One moment he was sitting beside Danny. The next he was a black blur racing across the cargo bay. He phased through a stack of crates, bounced off a wall, and caught the ball in midair. Then he came racing back, sliding to a stop at Danny's feet. He dropped the ball and looked up expectantly. "Good boy." Danny threw it again. This time Scout took a different route. He ran up the wall, defying gravity for 3 steps, then launched himself in an arc across the entire bay. He caught the ball and landed in a roll that should have been impossible for something his size. Danny threw the ball 17 more times. Scout retrieved it every single time, each attempt more elaborate than the last. On the final throw, he phased completely through the floor, disappeared for 3 seconds, and came back up through the ceiling with the ball in his mouth. By the time they finished, Scout was panting hard, but his tail never stopped wagging. He did what Danny had started calling zoom eyes, racing in wide circles around the cargo bay at speeds that made him almost invisible. Then he skidded to a stop at Danny's feet, tongue lolling out, looking incredibly pleased with himself. "Acceptable," Roth said over the intercom. But that was play. We need to test him in a real scenario. Danny had been dreading this. What did you have in mind, sir? The answer came the next day. Danny was assigned to normal patrol routes. Scout would come with him. If Scout showed any aggression, any hint of instability, the experiment would end immediately. Their first patrol was through the merchant district. The corridors were crowded with traders, travelers, and off-duty crew. People scattered when they saw Scout. Some screamed. A Yalian merchant dropped an entire crate of goods and ran. Scout pressed closer to Danny's leg, making himself as small as a creature his size could. His ears were flat, his tail tucked. All the confidence from the cargo bay was gone. "It's okay," Danny murmured. "They're just scared. You won't hurt them, right?" Scout looked up at him with those huge silver eyes and made a soft, questioning sound. "That's right. We're the good guys. We protect people." They continued the patrol slowly. Danny stopped to help the alien pick up his scattered goods. Scout sat perfectly still the entire time, though his nose twitched at some of the more interesting smells. When they finished, the merchant stared at Scout in disbelief. "It didn't eat me," he said. "His name is Scout. And no, he doesn't eat people." Word spread fast. By the third day, people stopped running. They still gave Scout a wide berth, but the panic was fading. On the fifth day, a human child broke away from her mother and ran straight at Scout. Danny's heart stopped. Scout could kill her in a second. The mother screamed. Security started running. But Scout just sat down heavily and lowered his head to the child's level. She patted his armored nose with both hands. "Pretty doggy," she said as Scout's tail thumped against the floor once. Twice. Then it wagged so hard it created a breeze. The mother arrived and snatched her daughter back, apologizing frantically. But she paused when she saw Scout's tail still wagging, his expression almost hopeful. "He really is like a dog," she said softly. "Yes, ma'am. Just bigger." That moment changed everything. People started to relax around Scout. Some even smiled when they saw him coming. A group of engineers built him a special collar with his name engraved on it. Scout wore it proudly, but not everyone was convinced. On day 12, Danny was called to deal with a disturbance at the docking ring. 3 merchant sailors were drunk and causing problems. They were big, mean, and looking for a fight. Danny tried to de-escalate. "Gentlemen, I'm going to have to ask you to return to your ship." The biggest one, a Kraven with 4 arms and an attitude, laughed. "And what's a baby human going to do about it?" Danny opened his mouth to respond. He never got the chance. Scout stepped out of the shadows behind him. The creature was utterly silent. His eyes locked onto the Kraven. His spines began to glow with that dangerous blue light. He didn't growl, didn't make a sound. He just stared. All 3 sailors went completely sober in an instant. The Kraven raised all 4 hands slowly. We're going. We're going right now." They practically ran back to their ship. Danny looked at Scout, who was still watching them leave. "Good boy. Scary but good." Scout's tail wagged once. His spines dimmed back to normal. Crime in Danny's patrol sector dropped 43% in 2 weeks. Turns out having a bioweapon at your side was better than any weapon. But the real test was coming. Commander Roth had scheduled a live combat simulation. Scout would face multiple prison drones programmed to attack. Danny would give the commands. If Scout lost control, if he showed too much aggression, if he ignored orders, they would both be terminated. Danny spent every spare moment preparing. They practiced attack and retreat commands, practiced targeting specific threats, practiced stopping on command even in the middle of a full sprint. Scout learned it all, but Danny could see the confusion in his eyes. Scout didn't understand why they were practicing violence. Everything in him had been designed for killing, but everything he had learned from Danny was about protection and gentleness that on the night before the test, Scout wouldn't settle. He paced Danny's quarters, whining softly. Finally, he pushed his head under Danny's hand and looked up at him. "You're worried," Danny said. "I get it. Tomorrow is important." Scout made a low sound in his chest. "But here's the thing, buddy. I don't need you to be a perfect weapon. I just need you to be you. Whatever happens, we face it together." Scout climbed onto Danny's bunk, which was absolutely not allowed and which Danny had given up trying to prevent. The creature curled around him protectively, his warmth and weight somehow comforting despite the fact that he was made of armor and claws. Danny fell asleep with his hand resting on Scout's head, not knowing that they would never make it to the combat simulation. Because in the morning, real enemies would come to Orbital 7, and Scout would show everyone exactly what he was capable of. The breach alarm started at 0600 hours. Danny was already awake, getting ready for the combat simulation. Scout was doing his morning routine of stealing Danny's socks and hiding them around the quarters. Then the station shuddered like it had been kicked by a giant. Red lights flooded everything. The automated voice was calm but urgent. Hull breach detected. Multiple hostiles. All security personnel report to stations. Danny grabbed his stun baton and ran for the door. Scout was beside him instantly, all playfulness gone. His body language had changed completely. Low to the ground, spines raised, eyes focused and alert. They reached the security station just as the reports started flooding in. 6 crawl raiders had punched through the outer hull with shaped charges. They were heading straight for the research wing. For the bioweapons, Commander Roth was already coordinating the response. All teams converge on research. Stop them before they reach containment. Danny fell in, with the security forces running toward the breach. Scout moved with them, silent as death. Other officers gave him nervous looks, but nobody told Danny to leave him behind. They needed every advantage they could get. Crawl were apex predators from a high-gravity death world, 9 feet tall with thick armored hides. For arms, each capable of tearing steel. Regenerative abilities that let them heal from almost anything. They had been raiding coalition stations for decades, stealing weapons and technology to fuel their endless wars. The first team met them in Corridor 12. Danny heard the weapons fire, heard the screaming, then silence. When his team arrived, there were bodies everywhere. The crawl had gone through them like paper. "Fall back," someone shouted. "We need heavy weapons." But the crawl were not falling back. They were advancing. Danny could hear them now, the heavy thud of their footsteps, the clicking of their breathing. They were hunting. Scout's body went rigid. A growl built in his chest, so low it made Danny's bones vibrate. "Stay with me," Danny whispered. "Stay." Scout stayed. But his entire body was coiled like a spring. The crawl rounded the corner. 6 of them, covered in the blood of Danny's colleagues. Their eyes locked onto the security forces. One of them laughed, a horrible clicking sound. "More humans," it said in broken standard. "More practice." They charged. Security forces opened fire. Stun rounds did nothing. Even live ammunition barely slowed them down. The crawl waded through the defensive line like it was nothing. One of them grabbed a security officer and lifted her off the ground. She screamed. The crawl opened its mouth, showing 3 rows of teeth. Scout moved before Danny could stop him. 1 second, he was at Danny's side. The next, he was gone. He phased through the security line, moving so fast he was just a black blur. He hit the crawl from the side with enough force to break bones. The creature dropped the officer. Scout was already moving, his claws finding weak points in the crawl's armor. Blue light flared. The crawl screamed. "Scout, return!" Danny shouted. Scout ignored him. Another crawl tried to grab him. Scout phased through its arms and came up underneath, his spines extending like blades. The crawl's regeneration was fast. Scout was faster. Danny ran forward. This was wrong. This was exactly what Roth had warned about. Scout losing control, becoming the weapon he was designed to be. But then Danny saw something that changed everything. A crawl swung at a fallen security officer. Scout appeared between them, taking the hit meant for the human. His blood sprayed out, acid eating through the crawl's arm. Scout yelped in pain, but held his ground, protecting the officer that he was not hunting. He was defending. "All units fall back," Danny shouted into his radio. "Get civilians out. Scout's got this." "Negative." Roth's voice crackled. "Control that creature, or I'm locking down the entire section with all of you inside." "With respect, sir, you can't control him, but you can trust him. Pull everyone back now." There was a pause. Then, "You have 2 minutes." Danny helped pull the wounded back. Scout held the corridor alone. 6 crawl against 1 bioweapon. The crawl had size and strength and armor. Scout had something they did not. He had been designed by the Vorath to kill things exactly like them, that he moved like liquid shadow, phasing through attacks, using his acid blood as a weapon, letting them hit him just enough to spray them with it. His claws found soft joints and weak spots. His speed made them look slow, but there were 6 of them. They were wearing him down. Scout was taking damage faster than he could heal it. His movements were getting slower. His breathing was labored. One of the crawl got behind him, raised all 4 arms for a killing blow. "Scout, behind you!" Danny screamed. Scout spun and went low, taking the legs out from under the crawl. Then he was on top of it, claws and teeth and fury. The crawl stopped moving. 5 left. They surrounded him. Scout was bleeding from a dozen wounds now. His legs were shaking, but his eyes found Danny through the crowd. There was no rage in them, no killing frenzy, just determination. He had a job to do. Protect. The crawl attacked from all sides at once. Scout could not phase fast enough. They hit him. Hard. He went down. No. Danny ran forward without thinking. His stun baton was useless, but he didn't care. Scout was his friend. His responsibility. 1. The crawl backhanded him casually. Danny flew 10 feet and hit the wall hard enough to see stars. Pain exploded through his ribs. He tried to get up and couldn't. Scout saw him fall. The creature that had been beaten down, that had been losing, that had been ready to collapse, suddenly stood. A sound came out of him that Danny had never heard before. Not a growl, not a roar. Something primal and ancient and absolutely terrifying. What happened next was not a fight. It was a slaughter. Scout stopped holding back. He phased through one crawl and out the other side, taking its spine with him. He moved faster than Danny's eyes could follow. His claws were everywhere at once. His teeth found throats. His blood burned through armor like it was nothing. The crawl tried to run. Scout did not let them. In less than 2 minutes, all 5 of them were dead on the floor. Then Scout stood there, covered in blood, both his and theirs, panting hard. His legs were shaking. His wounds were severe. He looked like he might collapse any second, but he walked over to Danny. Limped over, really. He lowered his head and nuzzled Danny's face gently, checking for injuries. Then he sat down beside him, positioning his body between Danny and the corridor. Guarding him, medical teams rushed in. Security forces stared at the carnage in disbelief. Commander Roth appeared at the entrance to the corridor and just stopped. He looked at the 6 dead crawl, looked at Scout, who was swaying on his feet but still alert, still protecting Danny. Looked at the recordings his helmet cam had captured. "Get them both to medical," Roth said quietly. Now, in the medical bay, Scout refused to be treated until Danny was checked first. He sat beside Danny's bed and would not move. When Danny finally convinced him to let the doctors help, Scout lay down with his head in Danny's lap, just like that first day. Lyra came by later. "I saw the recordings. All of them. Do you know what Scout did?" Danny was stroking Scout's head. The creature was finally sleeping, his wounds already starting to heal. He protected people. He killed 6 crawl in under 10 minutes. But you're right. He never touched a human. Not once. When security officers were in his way, he phased around them. When falling debris was about to hit someone, he caught it. Even in the middle of combat, even when he was losing, he was protecting everyone. That's what I've been trying to tell you. He's not a weapon. He's just Scout. Lyra clicked her beak thoughtfully. The other species representatives are calling an emergency session. They saw what Scout did. They're terrified. Of course they are. They don't understand. No, Lyra said. But maybe it's time we help them. Scout's tail thumped once against the medical bed, even in sleep. His paw twitched like he was dreaming of chasing balls. Danny smiled and kept stroking his head. They had proven Scout could fight. Tomorrow they would have to prove he was worth saving. The tribunal room was packed. Representatives from 12 different species sat in a semicircle. Human diplomats, Vestian military officers, planarian scientists, even 2 crawl observers, there to see justice for their fallen raiders. The air smelled like tension and too many different atmospheric preferences trying to mix. Danny sat in a chair that felt too small. Scout lay beside him on the floor, as close as he could get without actually climbing into Danny's lap. The creature had not left Danny's side for 3 days. Not since the attack. Commander Roth stood at the podium, presenting his case. Subject 19, Designation Scout, killed 6 crawl raiders in 9 minutes and 43 seconds. The recordings show extreme violence, calculated hunting behavior, use of lethal force against sentient beings. The hologram showed Scout tearing through the crawl. Even Danny had to admit it looked terrifying. Scout's eyes were locked on the screen. His ears were flat. He made a soft, whining sound. "Easy boy," Danny whispered. "Just pictures." One of the Vestian representatives spoke up. "Commander Roth, did the creature show any aggression toward Coalition personnel?" "No, but that's not the point. The point is what it's capable of. Today it protected us. Tomorrow it might decide we're the threat." A plenarian scientist with green markings raised 2 of her 4 hands. That logic applies to any soldier, any security officer. Private Reeves himself carries weapons. Should we ban him too? Murmurs rippled through the room. Roth's jaw tightened. Private Reeves is not a genetically engineered killing machine. "No," Lyra said, standing from her seat. "But Scout is not just a killing machine either. May I present my findings?" The tribunal leader, an ancient Yalian with silver skin, gestured for her to continue. Lyra brought up new holograms, brain scans, behavioral data, recorded interactions between Danny and Scout. Scout has shown consistent protective instincts, not just toward Private Reeves, but toward all humans. Analysis of the attack footage shows he deliberately positioned himself to minimize civilian casualties. When debris fell near medical staff, he caught it. When a security officer stumbled into his path, he phased through the floor rather than through her. One of the human diplomats leaned forward, but he still killed 6 beings. Brutally, he neutralized 6 raiders who had already killed 18 coalition personnel, Lyra corrected. Raiders who were there to steal bioweapons and use them against innocent populations. Scout stopped them. How is that different from what any soldier does? The crawl observer stood. He was massive, even bigger than the raiders had been. The difference is choice. A soldier chooses to fight. This creature is programmed. Danny couldn't stay quiet anymore. He stood up. "Permission to speak, sir." The Yalian tribunal leader studied him. "Private Reeves, you've been quiet. Please share your thoughts." Danny looked down at Scout, who was watching him with those huge silver eyes. "Everyone keeps calling Scout a creature, a weapon, a thing, but I've lived with him for almost a month now. I watch him learn and grow. I've seen him make choices." "What choices?" the crawl observer demanded. "Every day, he chooses not to kill me. He could, easily. I'm asleep for 8 hours every night with him in my quarters. He chooses not to hurt anyone on this station, even when they're scared of him, even when they run screaming. He chooses to bring me things he thinks I like, to play fetch, to wag his tail when he's happy." Danny's voice caught. During the attack, he was losing. He was hurt and tired and outnumbered. He could have run, could have phased through the walls and escaped. But he chose to stay, chose to keep fighting because people needed him. That's not programming. That's courage. The room was silent. Scout stood up and pressed against Danny's leg, sensing his distress. His tail gave one uncertain wag. The tribunal leader spoke carefully. "Even if we accept that Scout has some level of autonomy, the question remains, what do we do with him? He is too dangerous to simply release, too valuable to destroy, but also too unpredictable to fully trust." Admiral Kress appeared on the main screen. "I have a proposal. Earth's military research facility on Titan Station has offered to take both Private Reeves and Scout. They want to study the bond, see if it can be replicated with other bioweapons, create rehabilitation programs." "Absolutely not," said a Vestian general. "You want to create an army of human-bonded weapons. That's the worst possible outcome. Better than destroying something we don't understand," a human diplomat argued. "Scout saved 200 lives. He deserves better than execution." The arguments went back and forth for hours. Danny sat through all of it, holding on his Scout's collar. The creature was getting agitated. Too many loud voices. Too much tension. His spine started to glow faintly. Finally, the tribunal leader called for order. "We will vote. 3 options. 1. Immediate termination of Subject 19. 2. Transfer to Titan Station for study. 3. release into Private Reeves's permanent custody with restrictions. The vote was split. 6 for termination, 4 for Titan Station, 2 for custody. Not enough consensus for any option. Then we have an impasse, the alien said. Private Reeves, the final choice falls to you. You can accept transfer to Titan Station, where you and Scout will be studied but alive. Or you can refuse, and Scout will be terminated. There is no third option. Danny felt like he couldn't breathe. Titan Station meant leaving everything. His career, his friends, his life. It meant becoming a research subject. A lab rat, but alive. How long? Danny asked. How long at Titan Station? Lyra answered. Minimum 5 years. Possibly longer, depending on results. 5 years in a lab. 5 years of tests and observations. But Scout would be alive. They would be together. Danny looked at Scout. The creature was watching him intently, head tilted, trying to understand. His tail gave a small, hopeful wag. He trusted Danny completely. Trusted him to make the right choice. I need a moment, Danny said. Can I have 5 minutes? The tribunal leader nodded. Danny walked out into the corridor. Scout followed, of course. They found an empty observation room overlooking the planet below. Danny sat on the floor. Scout climbed into his lap, too big to fit, but trying anyway. What do I do, buddy? Danny asked. If I say no, they'll kill you. If I say yes, we spend the next 5 years being poked and prodded. Is that fair to you? Scout licked his face. His tail wagged slowly. You don't even understand what I'm saying, do you? You just know I'm upset. But maybe that was answer enough. Scout didn't care where they went or what they did. He just wanted to be with Danny. That's simple. That pure. Danny made his decision. He stood up and walked back into the tribunal room. Scout trotted beside him, tail still wagging. Private Reeves, the alien said. What is your answer? Danny looked at all the representatives. At Roth, who had his arms crossed. At Lyra, who looked hopeful. At the Crawl Observer, who looked skeptical. At Admiral Kress, on the screen. I refuse, Danny said clearly. The room erupted. Roth jumped to his feet. Private, do you understand what you just did? Yes, sir. I'm refusing the transfer. I'm also resigning my commission. Scout and I are leaving the coalition military. We'll go back to Earth as civilians. That's not an option, the Vestian general said. Scout is military property. No, Danny said firmly. Scout is a living being who has bonded with me. I'm not abandoning him. I'm not letting you kill him. And I'm not spending 5 years in a lab. We're done here. He turned to leave. Security officers moved to block the door. Scout growled, low and dangerous. His spines flared bright blue. Stand down, Admiral Kress said sharply. All of you. Everyone froze. Kress looked at Danny for a long moment. You're willing to throw away your career for this creature? He's not a creature. He's my friend. And yes, absolutely. Something shifted in Kress's expression. Sit down, Private. All of you sit down. Confused, Danny returned to his seat. Scout pressed against his leg, still alert. Kress smiled slightly. I was hoping you'd say that. 3 weeks later, Danny stood on the transport deck with a duffel bag and a bioweapon who kept stealing his socks. Orbital 7 looked smaller through the viewport, shrinking as their ship pulled away toward Titan Station. Not everyone had been happy with the compromise. The Vestians called it a dangerous precedent. The Crawl observers filed formal protests. But Admiral Kress had pushed it through anyway. Danny and Scout would go to Titan Station, but not as test subjects. As volunteers, researchers, part of a new program studying human-animal bonds in extreme environments. You sure about this? Lyra asked. She had come along as the project lead. Her 4 arms were full of data pads and equipment, but she still managed to look excited. 5 years is a long time. Danny looked at Scout, who was currently trying to fit his entire head into Danny's duffel bag. I'm sure. The journey to Titan Station took 6 days. Scout spent most of it doing zoom eyes through the cargo bay, much to the crew's amusement. By day 3, even the pilot was throwing balls for him. By day 5, Scout had collected 17 new items for his hoard, including someone's toolbox, a fire extinguisher, and mysteriously, a live plant from the captain's quarters. He's a menace, the captain said, but she was smiling. She scratched Scout behind his ears. He leaned into it, tail wagging. A very good menace. Titan Station was smaller than Orbital 7, but more modern. Built into the moon's surface with sections both above and below ground. The research facility took up the entire lower levels. When they docked, a team of scientists was waiting. They looked nervous until Scout trotted off the ship and immediately sat at Danny's command. "He's so well-behaved," one scientist said, surprised. "Usually," Danny said, "unless you have socks." He has a thing about socks. They were given quarters in the research wing, bigger than Danny's old room, with reinforced walls and a separate space for Scout. The creature walked around sniffing everything, making little chirping sounds of approval. Then he dragged his bed into Danny's room and refused to use the separate space at all. "I tried," Danny told Lyra. The first week was all orientation. Meeting staff, learning procedures, understanding what the research would actually involve. Danny had been worried about invasive tests, but Lyra kept her word. Everything was voluntary. Everything was documented, but respectful. They watched Scout play, watch him train, watch how he interacted with different people. They ran brain scans while he slept, drew blood samples while Danny held his paw. Scout tolerated it all with patient confusion, as long as Danny was there. But the real work started in week 2. They brought in another bioweapon. Subject 27. A Vora specimen similar to Scout, but smaller, with green-tinted armor instead of black. It had been violent in containment, uncooperative. The handlers could barely get near it. Danny and Scout visited it together. The creature snarled when they approached the containment cell. Its spines flared. It threw itself against the transparent barrier hard enough to crack it. Scout sat down and tilted his head. He made a soft chirping sound. 27 stopped mid-charge. It stared at Scout with obvious confusion. Scout chirped again, like he was talking. "Are they communicating?" Lyra asked, fascinated. "I don't know." "Scout, stay here. I'm going inside." "Danny, wait." Lyra started, but he was already at the door that he opened it slowly. 27's eyes locked on him. The creature gathered itself to pounce. Then Scout phased through the barrier and positioned himself between them. Not aggressive, just present. He looked at 27 and made a long, complex series of sounds. 27 sat down. Its spines dimmed. Danny approached carefully, hand out. "Hey there. I'm not going to hurt you." 27 sniffed his hand. Then, incredibly, it pressed its head against his palm, just like Scout had done that first night. Danny felt its rapid heartbeat, felt its fear. "Yeah," Danny whispered. "You're scared. Alone. I get it." Over the next month, they worked with 27. Danny and another handler, a quiet woman named Rebecca, who reminded Danny of himself. 27 slowly learned to trust, learned commands, learned that humans were not the enemy. By month 3, they had 4 bioweapons in the program. Scout became their leader, showing the others how to behave, teaching them games, playing with them in the reinforced training areas. It was like watching a big brother taking care of younger siblings. The research data was remarkable. Every bioweapon that bonded with a human showed the same changes Scout had. Reduced aggression, increased social behavior, brain chemistry that indicated happiness. They were transforming from weapons into something else. Something better. News of the program spread. Requests came in from all over the coalition. Species that had been enemies of the Vorith wanted to see if their captured bioweapons could be rehabilitated. Other facilities wanted to start similar programs. The work Danny and Scout were doing was changing how the galaxy thought about biological weapons. But Danny's favorite time was still the evenings. After all the tests and training and research, he would take Scout to the observation deck. They would sit together and look out at the stars. Scout would rest his massive head in Danny's lap, tail thumping contentedly against the floor. "You did good today," Danny would say. Helped 27 learn to fetch. Showed 41 how to play nice with the other handlers. Scout would make happy rumbling sounds. His eyes would half close in contentment. One evening, 6 months into the program, Lyra joined them. "I have news. The Coalition wants to expand the program. They're offering funding for 10 more facilities. Species-specific bonding research. The works." "That's amazing," Danny said. "It is. And they want you to train the new handlers." You and Scout. You'd be traveling, teaching others what you've learned. It would mean more time away from Titan Station. Danny thought about it. Thought about all the other bioweapons out there. Alone in cells. Scared. Violent because they didn't know anything else. Thought about how many scouts were waiting to be discovered. What do you think, buddy? Danny asked. Want all more friends? Scout's tail wagged hard enough to create a breeze. He stood up and did a quick zoom around the observation deck, then came back and sat perfectly at attention, tongue lolling out in what Danny now recognized as his happy face. I'll take that as a yes, Danny said 2 years into the program. Danny stood in front of a class of 50 new handlers. Scout sat beside him, wearing his coalition badge with pride. Behind them, the training facility housed 32 rehabilitated bioweapons. All of them bonded, all of them happy, all of them proof that weapons could become friends. The most important thing to remember, Danny told the class, is that these creatures are not tools. They're not projects. They're living beings who deserve respect and kindness. Your job is not to control them. Your job is to understand them. Scout made a soft sound. One of the new recruits raised her hand. How do you know when you've bonded with them? Danny smiled. You'll know. It's different for everyone. For me, it was the moment Scout chose to trust me despite every reason not to. When he pressed his head into my hand and decided I was worth keeping. After class, Danny and Scout walked through the facility. They visited each bioweapon, checking on them. They had names now. Ash, Storm, Cobalt, River, Pixel, who kept stealing electronics. Midnight, who was terrified of loud noises. Banner, who loved to sing. Each one unique. Each one special. In the common area, 3 bioweapons were playing with their handlers. Chasing balls, doing tricks, making happy sounds. One of them brought Danny a toy. He threw it. Scout raced after it, phasing through obstacles, his joy obvious in every movement. This was what they had built. Not a weapons program. A family. That night, back in his quarters, Danny wrote an email to his parents on Earth. Told them about the work. About Scout. About how something designed for destruction had taught him about creation. About building bonds instead of breaking them. Scout was already asleep on his too small bed, legs twitching as he dreamed. Probably chasing magnetic balls through infinite corridors. His collar glinted in the low light. His nameplate read, Scout, Companion Class, first of his kind. Danny turned off the lights and climbed into his own bed. A moment later, he felt the familiar weight as Scout climbed up next to him, pressing close. It was against regulations. It always had been. Danny had stopped caring months ago. Good boy, Danny whispered into the dark. Best boy. Scout's tail thumped twice against the mattress. His breathing slowed as he settled back into sleep. Tomorrow they would train more handlers, help more bioweapons, change more minds about what was possible when you chose compassion over fear. But tonight, Danny just enjoyed the warmth of his friend beside him. The creature who was supposed to be a weapon. The creature who chose to be a companion instead. The creature who proved that what you were designed to be mattered less than who you chose to become. Somewhere in the facility, another handler was meeting their first bioweapon. Somewhere, another scout was learning that humans were not the enemy. That hands could offer gentleness instead of pain. That trust was possible. And somewhere out in the galaxy, more weapons waited to become friends. More monsters waited to learn they could be good boys. More impossible bonds waited to be formed. Danny fell asleep smiling, Scout's heartbeat steady and strong against his side. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. New chances to prove that the best weapons were the ones you never had to use. That the strongest bonds were built on choice and trust and love. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, there was just a man and his bioweapon puppy, sleeping peacefully under distant stars, dreaming of games to play and worlds to save and all the good they would do together. Scout's tail thumped one last time in his sleep. In the morning, there would be Zoom eyes. There would be stolen socks. There would be work to do and friends to help. But right now, everything was exactly as it should be. Right now, they were home. Share artifacts, download all bioweapon puppy outline document, MD.